Good evening and welcome to Romanov Ball Cosplay. Today I'm going to be showing you how I created my LUMINARA UNDULI cosplay from Star Wars for Phoenix Fan Fusion 2023. And make sure to stick around for some tips for your own LUMINARA cosplay or just any Jedi Master. Without further ado, let's get started. Going over materials, I'm going to start with the fabric. I got this beautiful dark brown suede for the skirt. I got it on clearance, which was super helpful, and I think this will look beautiful. And to give the skirt some weight, I got this beautiful dark brown tweed. For the fabric for a top, I'm using this fringed fabric that I've had for a while. As you see, when I stretch it, it gives it the right ridged appeal. I'll use this to create the shirt. For the vest-like garment she wears over her top, I'm going to use this brown wool cape that I've had for years. Ending off the fabrics, I use this thrifted suede to create the tabard and the gauntlets. Now for the headdress, I used a baseball cap like I did in my Ahsoka video and some thrifted fabric along with the fabrics mentioned earlier to make the headdress. And I'll use cardboard for the base. I also used a variety of trims to give the costume a unique appeal. For the headdress, I used a baseball cap like I did in my Ahsoka video. Then I covered the edges in contact cement and glued the fabric around it. I layered it in the fabric that I used for my skirt and then used cardboard to cut out the base. Once I was happy with the cardboard base, I covered it in the lining fabric I used for my skirt and then with the faux suede. I draped the fabric over the base and then folded it in the back to give it the right silhouette. Once that was complete, I used this beautiful trim and I glued it all around it. Getting started with the skirt, I'm drafting a pattern based on this 1890s walking skirt, with the only difference being the open front. I've always had an interest in historical fashion, and I thought that an 1890s or at least an early Edwardian walking skirt would work very well for the silhouette of Luminara's cosplay. After I assembled all the pieces and gathered it at the top, I had my finished skirt pattern. Once my mock-up was complete, I transferred the pattern onto my fashion fabric. I cut out all my pieces and then sewed them together. Finally, I gathered the skirt at the top using embroidery thread and then sewn it into a waistband. Now for the construction of the shirt. As you know, I wanted to stretch this fabric to give it the right texture, so I used this old shirt I've had for a while, which is a bit too small now, and I just cut it directly to size. Once it was put together, it was stretched to have the exact texture. Now for the vest-like garment. I'm using this wool cape which I've had for years, and I'm removing all the attachments and getting it ready to construct. I cut open the sides to allow the sleeves to go through and then cut it into a vest. Then I proceeded to tailor the sides and the back to give it the correct fit. Due to the worn state of the fabric, this was very difficult to construct. Whenever I wear it, I have to pin it to my top to get it to fit right, otherwise it appears way too small. Now I'm using the excess fabric to create the sleeves. The sleeves are simply rectangles that are gathered at the top. I sewed it down the center and then cut it in a curved shape. Finally, I created the brooch out of some EVA foam and a pin. I cut out some foam into the proper shape and then sewed some beads at the end of it. For the tabard, I got lucky and thrifted a suede jacket that I used for the fabric. I used various paint colors and looked at multiple references and just did my best with my finger. I tried to use foam brushes, however I could get the most precise application with my finger. I did the same for the gauntlets and then layered it on top of EVA foam, which I finished off with the same trim I used for the headdress. Finally, I thrifted multiple belts and pieced together the parts that were needed, including the metal disc. I cut the metal disc off its original and then glued it on top of another thrifted belt. Then I used one of the other discs and spray painted it gold and glued it to another belt I had. This was later attached to the tabard. Now let's finish things off with some tips. Tip number 1 for a Luminara cosplay would to be definitely researching historical fashion, particularly late Victorian and early Edwardian. First of all, I was amazed with the sheer mobility that the Victorian walking skirt had. First of all, it gave the perfect silhouette for the character, and second of all, I was able to lightsaber fight, walk around the convention, and I had little to no issue. Well, it almost went in the escalator, but that's just water under the bridge. For my next tip, it would be to reference both the Clone Wars and live actions versions of LUMINARA and also any other character. You see, due to the animation restrictions, especially at the time of Clone Wars being made, they had to simplify a lot of the designs of the characters. For example, in the prequels, LUMINARA's costume is absolutely beautiful, but whenever she's in the background, I won't lie, she looks like kind of a blob of fabric. And not to mention the costume is very impractical. However, the Clone Wars simplified it and gave her a much more defined silhouette and a lot more of a unique costume that is still somewhat practical, unlike the live-action counterpart. This can be great for if you want to have a really cool project to work on, you want to cosplay Jedi Master, but you don't want to do something that's really heavy or majorly intricate. And tip number 3 for LUMINARA, this is actually something I learned, is to not use cardboard for the base of the headdress, since it's not as durable as something like plastic. A lady running a medieval reenactment group who apparently really specializes in hats told me to replace the cardboard at some point with plastic.